Hello. In this video we will be discussing cold storage. Cold storage sounds like a fancy concept, but at its core it's very simple. Cold storage refers to keeping a reserve of Bitcoin offline as a security measure, or more specifically, it refers to taking your Bitcoin or your private keys offline. So as an example of cold storage, let's just suppose you have a Coinbase account and you feel like you have too many Bitcoin on Coinbase. Maybe you have 500 Bitcoin. So what you could do is you could get a hardware wallet, generate an address from that hardware wallet, and then send the Bitcoin from your Coinbase account to that address, thereby taking those Bitcoin offline. It's as simple as that. However, the complexity of cold storage comes from the many different methods of doing cold storage. There isn't one best way of storing your Bitcoin offline, as there's many pros and cons to every different way of doing so. For example, in the hardware wallet example, what if you lost your hardware wallet or your SOL? So there's no real best way of doing it. So typically what people do is they use a combination of methods, of cold storage methods, to store their Bitcoin offline. I'll get into that a little bit later. And just to touch on something I said in the previous video, I said exchanges are able to store your Bitcoin by using cold storage. What I meant by that is exchanges ensure your Bitcoin by only making available 2% of their Bitcoin reserves for trading. So when you purchase Bitcoin from an exchange, or when all these exchanges are, they're doing all this trading and they're holding your wallet, in the event that a hacker hacked their website or hacked their servers and stole all your Bitcoin, they still have 98% of their Bitcoin reserves. So they'll be able to fully refund you for the Bitcoin that you lost. That's how these exchanges ensure that if you lose your Bitcoin, they can always compensate you for your losses. But to get back into what I was talking about before, let's just discuss a few of the cold storage methods. There's hardware wallets. You can store your private keys on a USB flash drive. That's not connected to the internet. You can connect it to computers that are disconnected from the internet. Maybe they don't have a network card. I have a computer, for example, right now I have a computer whose network card doesn't work, so it can't connect to the internet, no matter what. So that would be an example of a computer that I could send Bitcoin to. You can put it on paper. Some people put it on paper. They write the private keys on paper, and this paper can either be laminated or not. As I'm sure you're aware, there's a lot of problems with using paper, but people still do it. You can engrave your private keys in metal. It goes on and on and on. You can use a safe deposit box that you can put into a bank, and in that box you can have, engraved in metal maybe, or maybe you just have a hardware wallet. I mean, it goes on and on and on. I'm not going to really describe like a way of doing cold storage beyond the first example, because that takes away from the creativity of creating your own method for cold storage. When it comes to cold storage, you want to be as paranoid as possible. You want to think of all the possible things that could happen to where people could steal your Bitcoin, your offline Bitcoin reserve. So like I said, it's up to you. You use your imagination, do research, think about all these complex possibilities that could happen. And after spending a lot of time thinking about everything that could happen, you can come up with a method of storing your Bitcoin offline that is very secure. Now, what I was talking about just now, when I was talking about using a combination of these methods and thinking about all the different ways that someone could take your Bitcoin off your offline Bitcoin, this refers to deep cold storage. So cold storage simply just refers to keeping your reserve offline, but deep cold storage refers to coming up with a very complex means of storing your Bitcoin offline, such that it's much more difficult to retrieve or steal your Bitcoin than it is to store them. You've already done all the thinking. So for you to store the Bitcoin, it's very easy. You just do it. But for a hacker or for an adversary thief, they have to go through many different layers of security. For example, you might have stored it in a bank. The bank has, security on the perimeter. The bank puts it in a vault, so there's physical security there. Then they have to figure out, well, where is your Bitcoin? Do they even know you have Bitcoin? Perhaps you could store your Bitcoin in an item that you wouldn't think someone would put their Bitcoin in. Maybe a trap door or something. And then inside that trap door, you can have an additional means of security. Maybe there's a lockbox. And maybe in that lockbox, then you have, a USB flash drive. And maybe then you use steganography, which is a very fancy term for storing data within other files. For example, steganography, I'm probably mispronouncing that, not really good with words sometimes. An example of steganography would be storing your private keys within music files. So somebody, even if they went through all that effort to find your Bitcoin, they might pull out a USB flash drive and they just find a bunch of music files. And they might not be sophisticated enough to know that the Bitcoin addresses and the Bitcoin private keys are stored within the music files. Maybe you could have 5,000 different files on the USB. You see what I'm saying? Is that cold storage is all about making it very, very difficult to retrieve the Bitcoin. Storing them is easy. You already know how that works. But for an adversary, a thief, they don't know anything about you. They don't know what your plans are. Everything is made to where it's incredibly difficult for them to retrieve it, and it's inconvenient at best for you to retrieve it because you already know all the protocols and procedures. So, that's basically all there is to cold storage. There's not much to it. So like I said, when it comes to this, everybody needs to have a strategy for cold storage. It's a necessary security measure. I will say that. I will not tell you how to do cold storage, but I will say it's a necessary security measure. Because the thing is a lot of people are using online wallets and they're using these third parties. And the thing with third parties is that third parties introduce security vulnerabilities. The Bitcoin blockchain itself is very secure. It has yet to be hacked. No one has found a vulnerability in the Bitcoin blockchain as of yet for 9 years. That's very impressive. However, when it comes to these third parties who are hosting, who are holding your wallets and everything, and they're linking your Bitcoin to your bank account, and you have to use an email, and you have all these different things that they're adding to the Bitcoin ecosystem, that introduces vulnerabilities. As a matter of fact, hackers tend to find it much easier just to hack your email and then just commandeer your Coinbase account than it is for them to actually try to brute force your private key. So the thing is, this cold storage is a necessary security measure because you can never ever make the mistaken assumption that people are doing their due diligence when it comes to security. As a matter of fact, the reason why hackers there's so many successful hacking attempts is because people tend to get very lazy. They get complacent. They don't spend enough time thinking about security. People see security as inefficient or inconvenient. There's a trade-off between convenience and security. And the problem is, if you put your faith in an online wallet or something, or like your Bitcoin's online, there's third parties involved, you're putting faith in these third parties to make a best decision about that trade-off for your sake. Usually, from history, from every other industry that you can look at that has some sort of informational technology component, you cannot comfortably or confidently say that they will make that decision in your best interest. So for that reason, it's necessary to have a cold storage strategy.